New York City, Manhattan, skyscrapers gleaming metallic in the morning sun. Ethan stood in the conference room, staring out the window at the steady stream of cars and pedestrians passing by, but feeling a sense of uncertainty inside. He was a senior manager at the Foster Group and had an important client contract to finalize today. Ethan took a deep breath and tried to concentrate on the upcoming negotiations. Suddenly, the cell phone in his pocket vibrated. Ethan impatiently pulled out his cell phone and found a text message from an unfamiliar number. He frowned, hesitated, but still clicked on the message. "Your wife has someone else. Don't be fooled by her," the text message said, followed by a few photos. Ethan's heart sank, and his fingers trembled as he clicked on the photo. In front of his eyes was the scene of his wife Olivia and a strange man talking intimately in a cafe. The two of them had happy smiles on their faces, and Olivia's hand was still resting intimately on the back of the man's hand. Ethan was having trouble breathing. His mind was going blank. This couldn't be right. There had to be some mistake. He and Olivia had been married for 8 years, and although they'd recently drifted apart due to work, they'd always been very close, and there was no way Olivia would do something like this. As Ethan's mind wandered, the door to the conference room was pushed open and his colleagues filed in, professional smiles on their faces, ready to get the day started. Colleagues filed in, professional smiles on their faces, ready to begin the day's work, and Ethan snapped back to his senses, realizing he had work to do. He took a deep breath, forced himself to focus on the contract at hand, and tried to suppress the emotions that were swirling around him. For the next 2 hours, Ethan spoke mechanically like a robot, signing documents, but inside he was a mess. A few photos lingered in his mind like a brand. After the meeting, Ethan returned to his office alone. He closed the door, collapsed into a chair, and finally trembled uncontrollably. He clicked on the photos again, scrutinized the sweet smile on his wife's face, and felt a heartbreaking pain. What was wrong with their marriage? What made Olivia do such a thing? Ethan felt incredibly confused and helpless. He put down his cell phone and looked out the window, the Manhattan skyline glowing orange-red in the setting sun. In the past, he had always loved the city and his life, but at the moment, everything seemed so unreal and surreal. Ethan knew that he had to find out the truth as soon as possible, but he couldn't act on impulse and question Olivia. He needed to calm down and think things through. Maybe it was all just a terrible misunderstanding? After work, Ethan drove home alone. When he opened the door, Olivia was busy in the kitchen with her apron on. "Honey, you're back?" Olivia said sweetly, with her usual smile on her face. "Dinner will be ready soon." Ethan nodded woodenly, trying to squeeze out a smile. He sat down at the table and watched his wife in the kitchen, a million questions swirling inside him. Tonight's dinner was unexpectedly silent. Ethan chewed his food absent-mindedly, replaying the photos over and over again in his head, and Olivia, seeming to notice something strange about her husband, asked with concern, "Are you okay, honey? Are you having trouble at work?" Ethan shook his head and forced a smile. "It's okay. I'm just a little tired." After dinner, Olivia went to do the dishes and Ethan excused himself to go back to his study. He turned on his computer and began searching for signs that his wife was cheating on him. He checked Olivia's social media accounts and tried to find the mystery man in her circle of friends, but found nothing. Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair and closing his eyes. He knew he couldn't just recklessly question Olivia. It would only make things worse. He needed more evidence. He needed to find out why Olivia had betrayed him. Outside the window, the night was getting darker and the lights of Manhattan were illuminating the city that never sleeps. Ethan looked out of the window, his mind filled with confusion. He vowed that no matter what the truth was, he would find out, even if this truth may tear his life to shreds. The next morning, Ethan was running alone in the park. The rising sun cast a long shadow over him, and the cool morning breeze on his face cleared his head a little. But the anxiety and uncertainty still lingered inside him. As the pictures of Olivia with the mystery man continued to flash through his mind, Ethan tried to clear his mind, but the more he thought about it, the more despair he felt inside. He recalled how they met and fell in love. At that time, Olivia was so innocent and lovely, full of passion for life. They met in the university library and gradually developed from friends to lovers. After graduation, they got married in a simple but heartwarming ceremony, and Ethan remembers looking into Olivia's eyes and making a promise to love and cherish her forever. Their married life is quiet and happy. Despite the differences in their personalities and hobbies, they have always been able to tolerate each other and resolve their differences with love. Ethan devotes himself to his work in the hope of giving his wife and future children a stable and affluent life, while Olivia works in an art gallery and paints in her spare time, and lives a fulfilling and happy life. However, at some point, the pace of their lives began to become out of sync. Ethan's work was getting busier and busier. He often worked overtime and was always tired when he came home. Olivia, on the other hand, seemed to be more and more dissatisfied with her current life and began to crave for more excitement and artistic breakthroughs. The two of them have less and less communication and are drifting apart. It wasn't until yesterday that Ethan woke up and realized that their marriage was in trouble. But why did Olivia choose to cheat on him instead of communicating honestly with him? Could it be that he ignored his wife's feelings and failed to give her enough love? Ethan felt a pang of guilt at the thought. Perhaps he should really reflect on his own problems in the marriage. Was he so focused on his work that he neglected his wife's emotional needs? Should he spend more time with Olivia and listen to her? Jogging over, Ethan drove home. The moment he stepped into the house, he was keenly aware of something strange. Normally, Olivia would be at work by this time, but today, her bag and keys were still in the foyer. Ethan frowned and walked gingerly to the bedroom. Through the half-hidden door, he saw Olivia lying on her back on the bed, looking exhausted. Her cell phone was on her pillow, the screen still lit up. A sense of foreboding flooded Ethan's mind. He quietly retreated to the living room, his insides warring. Should he take this opportunity to check Olivia's cell phone for clues? But wouldn't that be an invasion of his wife's privacy? Ethan took a deep breath and tried to calm the turmoil inside. No, he couldn't act irrationally on the spur of the moment. He needed to calm down. He needed more evidence. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding after all? He couldn't let his paranoia and sensitivity ruin the marriage. Outside the window, Manhattan is waking up in the morning light. Traffic was flowing, pedestrians were milling about. Life went on, but Ethan's heart was already rippling. He knew he needed an answer that would unlock the mystery in his heart. No matter how harsh the answer might be, Ethan finally decided not to investigate Olivia's cell phone for the time being. He knew in his heart that doing so would not only break the trust between the two, but could also backfire. Right now, what he needs most is to calm down and get his head straight, not to act rashly. After work, Ethan called his best friend Jack, a private investigator who has been a close friend since their college days, and thought that Jack might be able to give him some objective advice. Half an hour later, the two men met at a bar they frequented, and as soon as Jack saw the look on Ethan's face, he knew something was wrong. "What's up, man?" Jack asked with concern, taking a seat across from Ethan. "You look preoccupied." Ethan laughed bitterly. "I'm probably the last man in the world to realize he's been betrayed by his wife." Jack frowned. "Wait, what? Olivia cheated?" Ethan nodded and showed Jack the photo on his cell phone. Jack scrutinized the photo and his face became more and more serious. "It sure doesn't seem right," Jack said, "but maybe it's not as bad as you think. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding." Ethan smiled bitterly. "I wish it were so. But you didn't see the way Olivia looked at that man. That look, she hasn't given me in a long time." "Look, Ethan," Jack said at length, "I understand how you feel right now, but you can't act rashly. You need to get to the bottom of this, but at the same time, you need to be calm and rational." Ethan nodded. He knew Jack was right, but the pain and agony in his heart couldn't be calmed. "What am I going to do, Jack?" asked Ethan, his voice full of helplessness. "I love Olivia, and I don't want to lose her, but I can't stand the betrayal either." Jack pondered for a moment. "You need to talk to Olivia. Not a questioning, not an interrogation, but an honest conversation. Ask her if anything has been bothering her lately, if there's something wrong with your marriage. Give her a chance to explain." Ethan nodded. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was probably the best option for now. "Thank you, Jack," Ethan said, forcing a smile. I feel lucky to have a friend like you. Jack patted Ethan on the shoulder. Don't be so serious, man. Maybe it's all just a ridiculous misunderstanding. Stay positive and believe in you and Olivia. Ethan nodded gratefully. Although the cloud of doubt had not yet lifted, the conversation with his friend had given him a sense of relief. He decided to go home and find the right time to talk to Olivia. He believed that as long as they were honest with each other, they could always find a way to resolve their differences. Outside the window, the night was drawing in. The hustle and bustle of the bar seemed to have nothing to do with Ethan. He looked into his glass of wine and thought about it. Whatever twists and turns lay ahead, he was ready to face them. Because he understands that marriage is never a one-man battle, but a journey of two people walking hand in hand. This time, I'll do my best, Ethan told himself. No matter how it turns out, I won't regret it, because I love her and I want to spend every day of my life with her. After talking to Jack, Ethan's mood calmed down a bit. He decided to find the right time to talk to Olivia. Maybe it was all just a ridiculous misunderstanding. By the time Ethan got home on Friday night, Olivia had already prepared dinner. The table was set with exquisite dishes and wine. The candles flickered, and the atmosphere was cozy and romantic. "Hi, honey." Olivia greeted Ethan with a smile. "How was your day?" Ethan forced a smile and sat down at the table. "Not bad, just a little tired." He looked at his wife's face, trying to catch a break in her expression, but Olivia looked as gentle and beautiful as ever. Dinner proceeded in silence as Ethan absent-mindedly cut into his plate of steak, replaying the photos in his head, and Olivia, seeming to notice something strange about her husband, asked with concern, "Are you sure everything's okay, dear? You seem preoccupied." Ethan put down his knife and fork and took a deep breath. Perhaps now was the best time to talk? "Olivia, we need to talk." Olivia frowned slightly and put down the cutlery in her hands. "Okay, what's up?" Ethan hesitated, weighing his words. "Have you been having any problems lately? I feel like we've drifted apart." Olivia smiled and reached for Ethan's hand. "Honey, you're worrying too much. We're both just too busy. You work so hard at your job, how can I be bothered?" Ethan looked into his wife's eyes, trying to find a hint of panic or weakness. But Olivia's gaze was open and honest, unabashedly honest, and Ethan felt a sense of confusion. Had he really misjudged Olivia? "I'm sorry, honey," Ethan whispered. "I shouldn't have been so paranoid. I just love you so much I'm afraid of losing you." Olivia laughed and caressed Ethan's cheek. "Fool, you'll never lose me. I love you. I'll always love you." A warm feeling welled up in Ethan's heart. Maybe Jack was right. Maybe he should really believe in Olivia and their love. Dinner ended on a sweet note. After dinner, the two of them nestled on the couch, quietly snuggling together. An old movie was playing on the TV, but Ethan's mind was not on the movie. He was thinking, weighing his options. Suddenly, Olivia's cell phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and looked a little flustered. "I'm going to take this call," she said, hurrying towards the balcony. Ethan frowned. Olivia's reaction made him uneasy again. Why was she avoiding answering her phone? Who was the person on the other end of the line? A chill went through Ethan. Maybe his instincts weren't wrong. Maybe Olivia really was hiding something from him. A horrible thought came to his mind. Could it be that the mysterious caller was the man in the photo? Ethan felt a wave of vertigo. He didn't know who or what to believe. All he knew was that he had to find out the truth as soon as possible, even if it might shatter his happiness. Outside the window, the night was getting darker and Ethan was sitting alone in the dark living room, with a million questions swirling in his mind. In the distance, Olivia's silhouette was hidden in the shadows of the balcony, her cell phone pressed to her ear as she talked to someone. Ethan closed his eyes and frowned in pain. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, he was mentally prepared. Because he understands that love is never easy, and sometimes, we have to go through ups and downs to reach the other side of happiness. Olivia returns to the living room from the balcony, a slightly tired expression on her face. She sits down next to Ethan and sighs softly. "Is everything okay?" Ethan asked with concern, trying to hide his inner anxiety. Olivia forced a smile. "No, it's just some work stuff. Things at the gallery have been stressing me out a bit lately. Ethan nodded, but the cloud of doubt in his mind was growing. It seemed to him that Olivia was hiding something, that the phone call was not as simple as she made it out to be. For the next few days, Ethan was on high alert. He began to watch Olivia's every move, trying to find more clues. He noticed that Olivia avoided answering her phone, and her cell phone seemed to be on silent. Finally, one day, while Olivia was in the shower, Ethan worked up the courage to pick up her cell phone. His hands trembled and he felt guilty inside, but he knew he had no choice. Turning on his cell phone, Ethan quickly skimmed through Olivia's call logs and messages. Suddenly, an unfamiliar name caught his eye. Over the past week, Olivia had been talking and texting with this person very frequently. Ethan's heart sank. He clicked on a text message that read, "Honey, I miss you. When can we meet again? I can't get the last exhibition out of my mind." Ethan felt the sky spinning. He couldn't believe his eyes. Who was this? What was Olivia doing with him behind his back? Where did they meet? A series of questions swirled in his head. Just then, the bathroom door opens and Olivia walks out, wrapped in her bathrobe, and turns pale when she sees Ethan holding her cell phone in his hand. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she asked in a panicked voice. Ethan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. "Olivia, we need to talk. Is there something you've been keeping from me lately?" Olivia bit her lip, her eyes twinkling. No. What are you talking about?" Ethan let out a bitter laugh and turned his cell phone screen to Olivia. "So what's this? Who is this man? Are you guys dating behind my back?" Olivia's face turned even paler. She opened her mouth as if to explain something, but eventually hung her head. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to hurt you." Ethan felt nothing but a wave of vertigo. His worst fears had come true. He clenched his fists, trying to control his emotions. "So, it's true? You really cheated on me?" Olivia nodded silently as tears began to gather in her eyes. "Ethan, please let me explain. I really didn't mean it. I was just so lonely." Ethan closed his eyes and shook his head in agony. He couldn't believe that his wife, whom he had loved for 8 years, had betrayed him. He was angry, sad, and disappointed. "Tell me, Olivia," he choked out. "Tell me why. Why are you doing this to me? Is there something wrong with our marriage? Is there something I'm not doing right?" Olivia shook her head helplessly, tears already beginning to slide down her cheeks. "No, Ethan, it's not your fault. It was me. I was selfish. I thought our life was too dull, and I longed for excitement, for being understood and appreciated. And that man, he's an artist. He makes me feel passionate in a way I haven't in a long time. I know it's wrong, but I just can't help myself." Ethan felt a wave of despair. It turned out that while he was working hard and giving everything to the family, his wife was seeking excitement behind his back. Suddenly, it seemed to him that their relationship had never been as strong as he had thought. "So do you love him?" Ethan asked, his voice full of hurt. "Are you really in love with him?" Olivia shook her head and sobbed. "No, I don't love him. I love only you, Ethan, and I know I've made a big mistake and I'm really sorry. Please forgive me and give me a chance to make it right." Ethan took a deep breath and felt a mix of emotions inside. He loved Olivia, and he didn't want to lose the family. But at the same time, he didn't know if he could ever trust her again, if he could ever love her as unreservedly as he had before. "I need some time, Olivia," he choked out. "I need to think about our future. I'm really confused right now. I don't know what to do." Olivia nodded, sobbing uncontrollably. "I understand, Ethan, and I respect whatever you decide. I just want you to know that I really love you, and I really regret hurting you." Ethan didn't say anything else. He got up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of the house without looking back. He needed to be alone. He needed to calm down and think. Outside, the night was dark. The cool evening breeze was blowing against Ethan's face, but it did nothing to calm his inner turmoil. He walked aimlessly down the street, his mind wandering. He remembered their past, how sweet and loving they used to be. He didn't understand why love had become like this. Are all marriages destined to experience betrayal and hurt? Ethan didn't know what awaited him up ahead, but he knew that no matter what, he had to make a decision. Because it wasn't just about his and Olivia's future, it was about his own life. What's his choice? Does he forgive Olivia and give each other a chance to start over? Or will he let go of the marriage and find new happiness? Ethan looked up into the night sky, where the stars were twinkling. He suddenly remembered what his father had once told him. Life is like a journey, and at any time, we have the right to choose our own direction. Yes, it was time to make a choice, Ethan thought. No matter how hard the road ahead was, he had to face it bravely, because he believed that if he was strong enough, one day he would find his way to happiness. After a long walk through the streets of Manhattan, Ethan's mind finally calmed down a bit. He began to think back over the years with Olivia, trying to figure out what had gone wrong in the marriage. He remembers that during their first years of marriage, he and Olivia were inseparable. They explored every corner of New York together and shared the joys of life together. But as time went on, especially as Ethan's career rose, they spent less and less time together. But as time went on, especially with Ethan's career advancement, the two of them spent less and less time together. Ethan often worked late into the night, and even when he came home, he was too exhausted to care about his wife's feelings. Ethan realizes that in the course of pursuing his career, he has gradually neglected Olivia's emotional needs. He always thought that as long as he could provide a rich material life, his wife should be satisfied. But he didn't realize that what Olivia needed was his companionship, his understanding, and his support. Ethan felt a pang of guilt at the thought. Perhaps he was partly to blame for Olivia's infidelity. He hadn't given his wife enough love and care, which had led her to seek solace outside the marriage. Ethan sat down on a bench and looked up at the stars in the night sky. He began to think about what changes he needed to make if he wanted to save the marriage. First, he has to learn to balance work and family. He has to organize his time well and make sure he has enough time for his wife. Secondly, he has to learn to listen to Olivia and understand her needs. He needs to make his wife feel that she is always the most important person in his heart. Again, he has to learn to express his love, not only through material things, but also through actions and words. Let Olivia feel that his love has never changed. Ethan felt a sense of relief. Yes, it took two people to fix a marriage. But as the husband, as the pillar of the family, it was his responsibility to take the first step. He had to prove to Olivia that he was willing to do whatever it took to make the relationship work. With that in mind, Ethan stood up. He was going home. He was going to talk to Olivia, not to blame, not to argue, but to communicate openly, to apologize sincerely, to express his determination to fix his marriage. Ethan walked home with hope in his heart. He believed that as long as he and Olivia were willing to work together, they would be able to get through this and rebuild their relationship stronger than ever. When Ethan opened the door to his home, the living room was silent. He gingerly walked to the bedroom and found Olivia sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes red and puffy as if she had just cried. "Olivia," Ethan called softly, taking a seat beside her. Olivia looked up, her eyes full of surprise and unease. "Ethan, you're back?" Ethan nodded and took Olivia's hand. "I'm back. I wanted to talk to you." Olivia's eyes reddened again. "Ethan, I'm really sorry. I know I hurt you and betrayed our marriage. Ethan gently placed a finger on Olivia's lips, signaling her to stop talking. "Olivia, I'm at fault too," he said sincerely. "Over the years, I've been so focused on my work that I've neglected your feelings. I didn't give you enough love and companionship. I'm sorry." Olivia's tears came to her eyes. She holds Ethan's hand tightly, as if she's afraid he'll suddenly disappear. "But I want you to know," Ethan continued, "that I'm willing to change. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for our marriage, for you. I believe that if we work together, there's nothing we can't overcome." Olivia choked back a sob and nodded her head. "I'm willing to try, Ethan. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family. Please give me a chance to make amends, to prove how much I love you." Ethan smiled weakly and gently kissed the tears away from Olivia's face. "We should all give each other a chance. Let's start over, okay?" Olivia nodded vigorously and wrapped her arms tightly around Ethan, and in that moment, all the pain and aggravation seemed to dissipate. They knew that as long as they had each other, life would always be full of hope. Outside the window, the sun was rising, and Manhattan glowed in the morning light. It was a new day, a new beginning for their marriage, and Ethan knew that there was a long road ahead, with countless obstacles to overcome. But he was ready, because he believed that together, he and Olivia would have no fear. The early morning sunlight streamed through the curtains and onto Ethan and Olivia's faces. They snuggled together, enjoying this rare moment of tranquility. After last night's confession and communication, their hearts seemed to be closer together again. But Ethan knew that there was still a long way to go to truly repair their marriage. Once trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. They need time, patience, and even more effort from each other. We should see a marriage counselor, Ethan suggested at breakfast that day. We need professional help to guide us on how to rebuild our relationship. Olivia nodded, a hint of apprehension in her eyes. I agree. We can't just bury our problems until they explode like we used to. We need to learn to communicate and listen to each other. So they began to see a marriage counselor on a regular basis. Under the guidance of the counselor, they learned how to better express their feelings, how to think differently and understand each other's needs. Gradually, the gap between them seemed to be slowly melting away. But the process wasn't easy. Sometimes, they would argue in the counseling room and open up each other's scars. Olivia would cry about Ethan's neglect, and Ethan would question Olivia's betrayal. But each time, with the help of the counselor, they find a way to resolve their conflicts. Gradually, Ethan began to change his lifestyle. He learned to organize his time and stopped letting work take over his life. He began to ask Olivia out on dates, just as he had done when they first fell in love. They went to art exhibitions, tried new restaurants, and went for walks in the park. Olivia is working on it too. She voluntarily quit her gallery job to devote herself to painting. She began opening a studio in her home to spend more time with herself and her family. She learned to express her needs to Ethan instead of keeping her grievances bottled up inside. Over time, Ethan realizes that the love between him and Olivia didn't disappear because of the betrayal. On the contrary, their relationship seemed to have hardened through the storm. They learned to appreciate each other, support each other, and fulfill each other. One night, while they were snuggled up on the couch watching a movie, Olivia suddenly turned her head and looked at Ethan fondly. "Ethan, I love you," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on us, for giving me a chance to start over." Ethan smiled and kissed his wife gently on the forehead. "I love you too, Olivia. I love you too, Olivia. We've all made mistakes, but the important thing is that we chose to face them, and we chose to change. I'm proud of us." At that moment, Ethan felt that their marriage had been tested in the worst way. Although the scars were still there, they had learned how to love and care for the relationship and how to bring it back to life. Outside the window, the New York night was drawing in. The hustle and bustle of the city seemed to have nothing to do with them. In this small room, in each other's arms, they found their own quiet harbor. Ethan knows that there will be ups and downs and new challenges ahead, but he is no longer afraid, because he knows that no matter what lies ahead, he and Olivia will face it together, hand in hand. That's what marriage is all about, Ethan thought. It's not about being perfect, it's about growing together. To see the true happiness in life in each other's company. Spring has sprung in Manhattan. In Central Park, trees are budding, flowers are blooming, and the air is full of life. Just like this city, after the baptism of the cold winter and renewed vitality. Ethan and Olivia's marriage, too, has seen a new beginning. After months of hard work, their relationship is stronger than ever. Although the scars are still there, they have learned how to love the relationship and how to make it come alive again. "Honey, it's been a long time since we've traveled together," Olivia suddenly suggested at breakfast that day. "Maybe we could take the weekend and go somewhere for a break, like we used to." Ethan smiles and nods. "Good idea. We could go to Long Island, where our favorite beaches and vineyards are." On Friday night, they packed their bags and drove to Long Island. The sun was setting, the ocean was glittering, and the ocean breeze was caressing their faces. As the sun set, the sea shimmered with golden light and the sea breeze caressed their faces. Ethan held Olivia's hand and felt an overwhelming sense of happiness and fulfillment. They stayed in a cozy bed and breakfast. The room was simple and elegant, with a view of the endless vineyards. In the mornings, they strolled through the vineyards, watching the morning dew shimmer on the leaves, Olivia excitedly describing her new painting idea with the passion of an artist in her eyes, and Ethan quietly listening, proud of his wife's talent. In the afternoon, they drove to the beach, where Olivia ran barefoot on the sand, letting the waves lap at her calves. She opened her arms to the sea breeze and smiled with innocence as Ethan stood by, using his cell phone to record the moment. He suddenly realized that he hadn't seen his wife this happy in a long time. At night, they barbecue on the patio of the B&B, Ethan building the fire and turning the ingredients, while Olivia prepares the salad and seasonings. Their smiling faces were reflected in the orange glow of the fire, and the night sky was dotted with stars. They sat side by side, sharing a meal and chatting about life. "Ethan, thank you for bringing me here," Olivia said, tears glistening in her eyes. "During this time, I've been reflecting on our marriage. I feel deeply sorry for my selfishness and impulsiveness, but at the same time, I also feel your love and tolerance. You have given me a chance to change my ways and let me find myself again." Ethan took his wife's hand and shook his head gently. "Olivia, I want to thank you too. Thank you for your honesty and hard work. We've both grown a lot from this experience. We've learned how to listen to each other, how to understand each other's needs, and I believe that our marriage will be stronger for it." Olivia nodded and snuggled into Ethan's arms. Under the starlight, they embraced quietly, feeling each other's heartbeat. At that moment, all the pain and suffering seemed to have been reduced to a few moments along the way. They knew that as long as they had each other, life would always be full of hope. As they drove back to New York on Sunday afternoon, their hearts were filled with gratitude and hope. The Manhattan skyline came into view, the skyscrapers gleaming in the sunlight. It was a city they knew and loved. Back home, Ethan put his bags away and sat down at his desk. He opened his notebook and began to write down what he had learned during this time. He knew that his and Olivia's story might help those who were going through difficult marriages. Dear reader, if you are reading this story, perhaps you are facing confusion and frustration in your marriage. Maybe you're questioning your choices, maybe you're shaking your faith in love. But I want to tell you, don't give up. True love is never a smooth ride. It requires us to make an effort, and we need to learn to tolerate and understand. As long as we are willing to work together to face the difficulties, there is nothing that cannot be overcome. Reflecting on Olivia and I's story, I realized that the meaning of marriage is not just about sweetness and romance. More importantly, it is about growing and progressing with each other. It is to protect our original vows and truest love in the midst of the storm. My friend, if you are at a low point in your marriage, don't be discouraged. Take the first step bravely, open your heart, and communicate with your partner honestly. Prove your love with action and resolve your differences with tolerance. I believe that as long as you are in the same boat, you will be able to find the direction of love again. I hope my story can bring you a little inspiration and comfort. Remember, love is never simple, but it's worth a lifetime of pursuit and care. After writing the last word, Ethan gently closed his notebook. Outside the window, the sun was slowly sinking into the horizon, gilding Manhattan with a layer of gold. He knew that this was not only the twilight of a city, but also a new chapter in his and Olivia's lives. From now on, they will walk hand in hand, side by side, to open up the infinite possibilities of life, because they understand that love is the courage and faith of each other. And as long as they have each other, there is no difficulty that cannot be overcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.